One of the things that really trips us up as Christians is our own desire to be like God. It's the very first sin that you see in Scripture. Eve was tempted to be like God, knowing good and evil. And it implies that she lacked something. In other words, she was not like God. In creating a lifestyle of discipleship, especially for myself, I wanted to take some time to talk through what the 5 steps in creating a lifestyle of discipleship have meant to me personally, both as I try to live them out, but also as I try to learn and experience and figure these things out on the way. So I wanted to take some time to talk about the first step, which is knowing your identity. As I mentioned in a previous video, you can go check that out in the link below in the description. Knowing my identity has probably been one of the most challenging things for me to do as a follower of Christ. And based on what I've read and studied and in talking to other people, knowing your identity is probably one of the most difficult things that we can do as Christians, period. One of the things that really trips us up as Christians is our own desire to be like God. It's the very first sin that you see in Scripture. Eve was tempted to be like God, knowing good and evil. And it implies that she lacked something. In other words, she was not like God. And so to overcome that lack, she wanted to be like God. That's what made this so tempting for her. And that same temptation to be something in and of ourselves drives a lot of us to do a lot of different things. And the antidote to that is what Jesus described as death to yourself. Giving up your own rights to control your life, giving up your own desires, your own will, and allowing God's will, God's way of living your life to be the way that you go about following Christ. And it's a huge challenge. And I believe the one way that we can make that simpler, make that easier, is to pursue an understanding of our identity as children of God. If you think about it, back maybe when you were a kid and you got in trouble, you're facing the imminent threat of punishment, and it's a scary thing. You wonder what's going to happen. Is my parent going to disown me? Am I going to be kicked out forever? And these kind of identity issues go through your head. But if you had a good relationship with your parents, and you were able to trust that they loved you as a son or a daughter, then discipline and correction kind of take on a different tone if it's done well. Now, granted, a lot of us as parents don't do that very well. But when we look to God as the perfect parent, the perfect father, He's always working on us in ways that will bring us closer to Him. That's what Peter's talking about when he says that God disciplines those He loves and He punishes those He accepts as children. God's doing His work in us because He's wanting to shape us and form us. And the good news in that, the reason this is a good thing is because He already accepts us as His children. That's our identity. If we know that we are His children, that He has adopted us, He's welcomed us in, we're secure in that identity as His child, then we don't have to fear or worry about what we are not, which was that first temptation that Adam and Eve faced. We don't have to worry about whether we're measuring up. We don't have to worry about whether we're doing all of the right things, saying all of the right things all the time. We have the freedom to be His children. And that's honestly been a huge struggle for me. I've got a huge desire to perform and to do things and to earn affirmation from others. And honestly, that's probably going to be a struggle my entire life, unless God just decides to drop some grace bomb on my life and I have some Damascus Road experience where all of a sudden I have this great moment where I'm accepted as His son and I don't have to Like that's not a thing that I worry about anymore. But it could be a slow journey that I work on for the rest of my life as well. And I think I'm becoming okay with that, but it's still a huge challenge. So all that to say, knowing your identity as a child of God, knowing that he loves you, that he accepts you, and that he wants to see you succeed probably more than you do. And by succeed, I mean successfully follow him as a child, wanting to be more like their father. Then if you can accept that he is that kind of a person, the rest of creating a lifestyle of discipleship starts to fall into place. And so for me, knowing your identity, we've got it as step one. I think that's probably the most important step that all of us need to work on at some point in our lives. It's a difficult step, but it's really necessary. And from what I can tell so far in my own journey in creating a lifestyle of discipleship, it's incredibly rewarding, incredibly liberating, and it really creates a great foundation for the 4 steps that follow.